Yes, that list does get a little bit daunting, I must say. And the longer I've been in business, the longer the list gets. I really love to speak here, and I love to be invited to the UVU. Of course, when I first came to Utah back in 1972, it was a small tech school located next to BYU, and then of course you moved down here, became a 4-year college, and still though, anybody who couldn't get into BYU came here, and now look at you, the largest university in the state of Utah, ranked right up there with the rest of them. My daughter is currently at SUU and looking to transfer up here, and she was talking about going to BYU, and I said, why? When you can come to UVU? And she says, well, Mom, you graduated from BYU. And I said, but I wouldn't if I had to do it over again. Anyway, Randy Beckham sent me an email of the things he wanted me to cover today, and so I just kind of want to give you all that I'm supposed to cover. What it takes to be a successful business leader in this community and throughout the region. Okay. Teach us about hard work, dedication, conviction, and sacrifice. Okay. Can I really succeed in business as a woman? Okay, how long do I have? Some principles and dedications it takes to be successful in an exciting high-end catering industry. Okay, so now we're into the second hour. Speak about your personal career, some frustrations as well as some good times. Give us some advice. If you had it to do all over again, what would you do differently? Advise us on some key points of successful business leadership and how these traits distinguish true leaders from others. And you have 45 minutes. Okay. Well, check out my book if I ever write it, okay, because that's where it'll be. What it takes to be a successful business leader is a little bit different than what it takes perhaps to be successful in business. Because I know many people who are successful in business, but they aren't necessarily leaders. For me, a leader is someone who has longevity, someone who's made it past the first 5 years. Yes, they may be successful, but for how long? And when you're a leader, you're someone that someone looks to. You have to have had some sort of level of integrity. People have to have trusted you. You don't look to a leader unless you trust them. And so for me, that's one of the biggest things that I've always wanted in my life and in my business was to be a person who was of integrity. I remember early on in my business, Geneva Steel had just opened up and Joe Cannon was put in as the CEO, and I had just started and I was catering their board meetings, and I was taking their continental breakfast and serving their coffee, and I'd be the little mouse sitting in the corner while they'd have these high-powered business board meetings going on, but I listened and I learned. The things that were taught in that board meeting really shaped who I am and what my business was about for the next 26 years. I remember at one time, one of the board members stood up and he said, I want to tell you about Joe Cannon and the kind of individual who stands as your CEO. He said, I'm an accountant in Washington, D.C., and Joe was one of my clients. Now, if you can imagine being an accountant in Washington, D.C., I have everyone come to me and say, if I do this on my taxes, can I get by with that? If I do this and I hide this over here, will the IRS ever find it? And he said, Joe Cannon comes to me and says, keep me as far away from that line as you can. And I sat there and I heard that and I thought, you know what? When I grow up, that's who I want to be. I want that said about me. That if nothing else, I was a woman of integrity and that people could trust me and that I was accountable for my actions. Being accountable is like one of these basic lessons you should be learning coming out of the cradle. I think about, even for example, back with Adam and Eve, it was their first big mistake. What happened here? Well, I don't know. Eve made me do it. And Eve, what happened? It was the serpent. It was the serpent. Okay, we fought so hard to have this ability to be accountable, and the first thing we get down here, we want to give it away. We want to be involved in blame. Well, the bad thing about blame is you can't ever change where you are right now, today, if it's the fault of someone else. The good news about being accountable If you're responsible for where you are right now in your life with what you're doing, it's 100% on your shoulders, not your parents, not your roommates, not your siblings, not the cops who stopped you this morning, none of those things. The good news is that you can change it. If you don't like where you are today, you can change it because you're accountable for where you are. That makes a good business leader. They cannot be involved in blame. They know that they're accountable for where they are in their life and what they've achieved 100%. They're accountable for their failures as well. And they can learn from them and change them. Now, some of the principles they wanted me to talk about were hard work, commitment, being dedicated. There's probably nobody in this room that can talk to you more about hard work than I can. It was my hallmark. When I started my catering company, I had 2 small boys that were very small, and I tried to be a mom and a wife and a business person. My husband suffered from several different problems and was not able to work, and so I kind of had to take the reins and become the bread earner in our family. And as I did that, I kind of found that my career took over my life. And when I say I worked 18 hours a day, I literally did work 18 hours a day. Slept 4, was with my family 2, and I did that for 18 years. I convinced myself that I only needed 4 hours of sleep, and that's all I took and allowed myself for 18 years. Now, so if you want to talk to me about hard work, get down here and do what I did, okay? It takes hard work. If I could go back and change one thing, maybe it might be that. Maybe I thought, maybe I didn't need to earn as much as I earned. I could have hired more people. I could have hired more support staff. But I was willing to do it. And I knew what it meant to do hard work. I knew what it meant to be dedicated to my company, to let nothing else waver me. I knew what it meant to be committed to a vision that had been given me of what Culinary Crafts could become. But all those 3 qualities, hard work, commitment, and dedication, mean nothing if you're going the wrong direction. You can work all you want. You can be committed all you want. You can be dedicated all you want if you're heading in the wrong direction. So before we talk about things like hard work, commitment, and dedication, we need to talk about vision. You need to decide where it is you want to be, and not where you want to be as much as what you want to be. We're human beings. We're not human doings. So when I talk to people, particularly students your age, and I ask them, I say, where do you want to be in 30 years? I get the most amazing list of things. Well, I want to make my first $1 million by the time I'm 30 so I can be a member of YPO, okay? I want to live in this area, and I want to have a wife, and I want to do this, and it's very important for me to be part of this organization, and I want to have accomplished this, and I want to be able to do this, and those are lists of do's. Anybody can have a list of do's, but what do you want to be? I want you to ponder that question. Who do you want to be when you reach the end? If you have the right vision, things like hard work, dedication, commitment will get you there. But you want to make sure that when you get there, it's where you want it to be. I know a lot of people in my life who have been successful, and when they get to the end and they look around and they think, and this is all there is? This is what I worked my entire life for? I recently went through a divorce about 1.5 years ago. As I watched half of everything I'd worked for walk out the door. So it'd be easy for me to say, and this is all there is after all that hard work? Other than I was able to say, but more than anything else, I am who I am. I'm the person I want to be. So no matter what walked out the door, I'm still happy where I am. Decide that today, guys, where you want to be, who you want to be. The rest of it follows. If the vision is clear, how you do it will flow to you. One of the things he wanted me to talk about was the principle of sacrifice. I kind of don't believe in it. So that's very hard for me to talk about, and I'll tell you why. I think in the long-term perspective of things, there's really no such thing as sacrifice. There's only such a thing as service. Anything that may have seemed a sacrifice to you can be seen as service. Oh, sure, I could say, it was a sacrifice for me to spend all those years working so hard at Culinary Crafts. But in reality, it was a service. It was a service to others, to my clients, to myself, to my family, to provide for them. It was a great opportunity for service. And if you begin to see things in terms of how you can be of genuine service, then you don't feel burdened down with sacrifice. I've had a lot of opportunities where students have come and interviewed me. In fact, Mickey just asked me, she said, can I have 2 students come and interview you? And I said, yeah. I had students from Salt Lake Community College come down, and 3 of them, they wanted to do an interview. They had to do a PowerPoint kind of thing. They came. We did an interview with them, and afterwards, this one gentleman, I just kept looking at him through this entire interview, he turned to me and he said, Mary, is there any one last piece of advice that you could give to students? And I looked right at him. And I said, I had no idea what was coming out of my mouth. And I said, have courage, believe in yourself. And we sat there fixated on each other's eyes. And then I said to him, did you think that was a piece of advice for everyone or for you? And he said, I felt like it was for me. And I said, it was. I made a difference in that man's life that day. Could have been seen as a sacrifice of my time to take an hour and a half out of my day, which is extremely busy, to sit down with 3 students from the Salt Lake Community College. But instead it was for me a great opportunity to be of service, to make a difference in someone's life. I'd like to take for just a moment to talk about something that Randy Beckham didn't ask me to talk about, that I think is a real key to being successful. And that's the principle of living debt-free. You will hear this pounded by me over and over and over again. It's how I've run Culinary Crafts. It's how I run my life. Being debt-free is freedom, and it is power. When I started Culinary Crafts, I made the decision that I was not going to borrow money no matter what. And if that meant I grew slower, then I would grow slower. But I was never going to encumber this company or my family with debt. Now, it's not that all debt is bad, but for me, I knew that it was. Never borrow on things that are depreciable. You can borrow money if it's something that's going to appreciate. But your interest will bear you down faster than anything depreciates. If you want to live debt-free, this is how you do it. Whatever you're driving today, I want you to drive it for 4 more years. I want you to think about it. Think about that wreck that's sitting out in the parking lot and drive it for 4 more years. And today, start saving for your next car. And in 4 years, you're going to go in and you're going to lay down cash and you're going to pay for your next car. Now, it may not be in a Cadillac Escalade, but you're going to pay cash for it, whatever it is. And from that day on, you will never pay credit again for a car. 2 years ago, I went out, bought my new Mercedes, laid down cash. Why? Because ever so long ago, 26 years ago, I made the decision that I was not going to encumber myself or my family with burdens of debt on depreciable goods. I only had to do that one time. I drove that '79 black Cutlass till the wheels fell off of it. But I had enough money to go in the next time and pay cash. And it will instill in you a desire to live debt-free completely. Now, I did borrow money for my home. But my goal, once I did, was to pay it off as fast as I could. And I owned that home debt-free in 5 years. Because every bit of extra money I had went into paying off that home. I borrowed money on my business, the ground and the building that we bought. But I gave it everything I had. Everything that was left over went into paying that. And in those 5 years, I now own that building and that ground. When the recession came, there were companies, catering companies that had been in business longer than I had, who closed their doors. Why? Because they had encumbered with debt. And when business dropped off 40%, they couldn't meet the payments on their vans. They couldn't meet the payments on their buildings. They were already behind on their cost of goods with Cisco and Alliant and all their food suppliers. My business dropped off 40%. 40%. But my doors, I never once thought I was going to close them. Because there was not one person who was going to come and take away my building, take away a van, take away a piece of equipment. And my staff stood beside me because they knew that I had never bounced a paycheck to them. I'd never asked one person to wait on payment. I'd never asked one time for them to come in second behind me with being paid. And so they trusted me. Live debt-free, and it is the biggest piece of freedom and power that you will find. Can I succeed as a businesswoman? Well, maybe. I've never found being a woman to be something that stood in my way of being successful. Maybe that was just the way I was brought up. My mother wore the pants in our family. So I had someone that I kind of watched, but it was my father that was the businessman. Taught me about service, about being there for people, what that meant, about being honest and integrity. What I find more challenging in this community is being a businesswoman in this community. When we first moved into our cul-de-sac, I had the women of the cul-de-sac come out and greet me and tell me how great it was to have me there and those kind of things. And then one of them said to me, and just so you know, Mary, no other woman in the cul-de-sac works. Ah, okay. What does that mean? She said, well, pretty soon, you're not going to be like working, right? And I said, probably I will be. And I thought to myself, she's not walked a mile in my shoes. She doesn't know why I work. She doesn't know why that I am here supporting my family, why I'm dedicating so much of my time to doing that, why I take my kids with me into work and they've learned to wash dishes and to load events and to sweep and mop floors. She didn't know anything about my family. But sometimes the judgments of those around us make it difficult as a woman to be involved in business. I tell you, since I've been divorced, I've had so many women come out of the woodwork and come up to me and say, oh, Mary, I would love to leave, but I can't. I don't know how. I don't know how I'd support myself. So if you are a woman sitting in this audience, it's important that you have a skill set. And if you're a man, live up to it. But if you're a woman and you want to be successful, my piece of advice to you is this. Approach life as an equal. I see women come into meetings all the time, and they come in with this approach of being coy and demure, and they get this and that. And I think, how can you be treated as an equal when you're coming in here like that? And then I see other women come in, and they're aggressive, and they're powerful, and they come in and they want to just run the whole show, and they want to tell everybody what to do. And I'm like, gee, Minnie Christmas, how can you be treated as an equal when you come in here and you want to just let everybody know who you are? Women, you want to be successful. See yourself as an equal. Act like an equal. Act like the business person that you want to be. And you are equal. Just don't doubt it. Run life in a win-win situation. It's kind of one of my philosophies. We hear that win-win thing all the time. You know, somebody plays win-lose, somebody plays, you know, lose-lose, blah, blah, but I don't think there's such a thing as win-lose. You're either playing win-win or you're lose-lose. Because in the end, if you play so that you win and someone else loses, in the end, you lose too. And you may not be able to see it at the present time. I've had so many staff come to me and say, you know, Mary, I've got another job offer, and so I'm going to take this, and I'm sorry, I have to move out of state, and I'm devastated because they're one of my key employees. And then I ask them, I say, are you sure that this is right for you? And if they say yes to me, then I get real excited, because then I know that it's right for me too. And somebody else is coming my direction. It's going to be even better. Okay? And I don't live in that world where if I win, you lose. But in all situations, I try and negotiate win-win. I'm not perfect in my catering company. We make mistakes. You know, I'd love to say that we've never disappointed a client, but I have. But when I go to them, and my first question is to them, how can I make this right by you? And what can I do? And when I take accountability for who I am and I want to play win-win, they play back the same. I've never had one client take advantage of me and say, well, I want my whole event free. Instead, they back down and they take a look and they say, well, I appreciate you taking accountability, and you know, this is really kind of what I'm thinking, and if I could just have that $200 refund to cover that small part, I'll be happy. I'm like, wow, and I was willing to give them $2,000, you know. But when you approach life with that win-win situation, it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman, you win. One of the things he asked me to talk about was how to be successful in a high-end catering business. Well, if all of you are going into catering, I'll definitely discuss that. If you're not, I'm going to talk about something a little bit more general. And I think that the same thing applies to being successful in catering as applies to being successful in any career. I happen to choose the high-end side. I wanted to be a caterer that was involved in the creme de la creme of events, things that I could be proud of every single time I went out. So one of the things that I was committed to was the principle of excellence, that I wanted to be about excellence. Now, not about perfection. Perfection will eat you alive. But to be about excellence, to be the very best that you can be. Yes, we've been awarded Best of State Caterer 7 years. And so when we're selling, we sell ourselves that way. We're the best. We're the best there is. So when we go out and we arrive on site, people's expectations are like, ta-da! You know, they're not down here thinking, oh, God, these guys are the best. They're not going to do very well. No, we're the best. When we show up on site, their expectations are like up here. And the pressure's on my staff. They know that. Every time they walk out the door, every time they go into an event, people's eyes are on them. Whatever happens here is the best. And so the pressure is on. But to the best is what best is. It's not perfection. It's excellence. Be about excellence in whatever field you endeavor into. I make money by selling a quality product, but I've grown my business by being an expert at it. And I want you to think about that for just a minute, how that applies to whatever career you're going into. You can make money by selling a quality product, but you grow your business by being an expert at what you do. Now, of course, I didn't have any training to be a caterer. I graduated from the Y in social work. Okay. I never worked for another caterer. I had no idea how to do the entire operation. I started from scratch, just by the seat of my pants and by a gut feeling of what I wanted to be when I finished and at the end of the game. And I can remember one of the first times I had somebody call me and say, do you do poached salmon? Oh, absolutely. You know, I took down her order and I hung up the phone and I said, we've got to get to the library, because we didn't have the internet. We've got to get to the library and learn how to do poached salmon. Okay? So, you know, it was one of those things, it was kind of a school of hard knock type of situation for me. And so I didn't know a lot when I started into this business. First time someone ever called and asked me if I did a crudité basket. Yes. Absolutely. They say, well, what do you put in your crudités? Well, we have a lot of choices. What things do you like to see in yours? Well, I like to see the normal things like carrots and celery, but I also like some asparagus, baby corn. It's vegetables. It's a vegetable basket. Okay, great. And I was able to talk to her all about that. So, it's a growing process. And along the way, I became an expert. It was about after 10 years in the business, and somebody called me and they said, we're planning this big event. We'd love to have you come, give us your ideas, talk about layout and how you would run this. I thought, me? And when I arrived on site, I looked at this huge space. It was at the Gallivan Center downtown Salt Lake. The event was going to be for 6,000 people. And I realized I did know. I knew exactly how it should run. And I began to have confidence in myself. And I began to market that confidence. And I began to market that expertise. Now people call me, hello, Chris. Why did you show up here? Oh, okay. Chris is one of my good friends. She works with me in Women in Philanthropy, and she's also my accountant, who chastises me for giving away too much. But anyway, so as I grew in being an expert, people began to call me and want my presence at events, in planning events, in growing events. And that's what grew my business, is being an expert at what I did. Not just selling catering, but being an expert. And think about becoming an expert at whatever you do. Learn about every piece that you can about what you're doing. I'd like to deviate just another moment from what Randy had asked me to talk about. And another principle that I've tried to live by and that I think is extremely important. And it's the principle of abundance. Now, this is kind of a funny kind of a principle. And a lot of people hear that and they think, oh, she lives in abundance. That must mean she makes tons of money. Or she lives in abundance and that must mean she's going to bring a lot of food to our event. But something more than that. Living in abundance looks like this. Picture yourself living on a beach. And you have your sandbox. And you have your shovel, you have your bucket. This is your space and you live here. And next to you is someone else. And they have their space. They have their bucket and they have their sand. And you're happy as a lark with your sand. You look over here and this person's sandbox is not very full. And they're kind of, floundering just a little bit because they don't have a lot of sand to play with. Well, that's okay, I've got plenty. So you're scooping away and you're just giving that sand away as fast as you can. And then you notice that your sand is getting a little low too. So you slow down what you're giving away. And then you notice that your box is getting a little bit empty, so you completely stop giving away your sand. But the thing you forget is that your sandbox is on a beach. And there's sand all around you. Now think about this principle for a minute. How many people do you know who live their life like this? With everything they've got tied up close to them. And they clutch it. Now my parents lived through the Depression, the real one. And it changed who they were. And my mom lived like this, afraid to give away a dime. There was not a piece of clothing that ever came into our home that she did not, before it left, cut out the zipper, every button, every hook, every eye, every snap, because you never know and there might not be another one. And that's how they lived their lives. It affected an entire generation. You know people like this? And I want to ask you, if you are living your life like this, how open are you to receive what's there for you on the beach? But if you live your life like this, you're not only open to give, but to receive. Because truly giving and receiving are the same emotion they're the same round. I can tell you when I sit like this and I dig those nails in the palms of my hands, it's not a very comfortable place. My blood pressure rises, my capillaries constrict, and by golly, I'm going to die of a heart attack. But when I live like this, my blood pressure lowers, it's 110/70, I feel good, and I'm ready to receive and give. That's the principle of abundance. Remember, you live on a beach. My personal career, I chose to be a caterer. Why? Well, first of all, I love to entertain. From the time I was little, I had my friends over, I'd make little tea parties for them, all those kinds of things. But I found that catering was an opportunity to serve others, to be of service, genuine service. You'll still see me today out bussing tables, asking people, how was everything? Can I get something for you? Well, let me grab that for you. I work right there in the trenches with my crew. I found it someplace that I could live the principles of excellence and abundance, integrity. I got to use my people skills, my organizational skills. I got to be creative. I got to do hard physical work, use my business head, create beautiful things. And after 26 years, I still love to go to work every day. If you can say that at the end of your life, and end of your career, you'll have lived a life fulfilled. If I had to do all over again, what would I have done differently? You know, it's easy to live a life of regret. I don't want to do that. It's not where I am. I had someone say to me recently, do you regret the 28 years that Ron took, the 28 best years of your life? And I said, if they had been the 28 best years, I probably would. I got 28 good ones yet to come. I don't live a life of regret. Every single thing that I have passed through has led me to where I am today. I am who I am today, standing here in front of you because of all that's passed behind me. I don't look back and think, oh my gosh, I wish I'd done that differently. Oh my gosh, this was differently. Every one of those pieces brought me to where I am. And so if I was to say, okay, Mary, well, you could give up the value of being patient. And then you wouldn't have to have gone through all those different things. That value is so important to me. Let me tell you, it's important to my children and my grandchildren to be patient. And so those things that I passed through brought me to this point. So I don't live a life of regret of what I would have done differently. Because everything that I went through brought me to where I am today, and I'm grateful for every single one of those. It's why I'm here. You know, there are some times you look back and think, just prior to the Olympics, Sports Illustrated said to me, we had their contract and we were supposed to do 3 mega parties where the who's who came. And they said, we want to do something really different, something really edgy, something that's never been seen before. And I said, okay, well, like what, reinvent chocolate? You know? And they said, no, but I know you'll come up with something. Okay, well, that was the year 2000. So I began to think, what could I do that no one has ever seen before? So I began to look. And in Toronto, Canada, I found something called a chocolate fountain. Never seen before in the United States. So I flew up there, I bought 8 of them, came back down, used them during the Olympics. The Wall Street Journal came and did an article on chocolate fountains. Now, within 1 year, everyone owned a chocolate fountain. And now, I wouldn't use a chocolate fountain if my life depended on it. I hate them, okay? But everybody wanted one. And so the distributor, the person who was manufacturing them in Canada, said to me, hey, Mary, would you like to be the U.S. distributor of these fountains? Oh, no. No. I'm a caterer. No. I mean, like how to make $60 gazillion in 2 years, to sell chocolate fountains, because everyone wanted one suddenly. There are things like that come and go. But, that I didn't take that opportunity, but who knows what opportunity I would have missed had I taken that. I remember when Tahitian Noni first started, and they had their group of 6 people, and they met at Carrie's Acey's home, and he asked me to bring some food in. I went over to his house, I took some food, and I was listening, how I always do that listening thing, and they're in there discussing how they're going to start this giant multi-level company. Afterwards, Carrie came out to me and said, Mary, you should really become involved in this. You're kind of a salesperson. I think you can work in that multi-level field. People would follow you. Now, I'm a caterer. Yeah. No. How would you like to have been one of the founding 7 people of Tahitian Noni? Okay? That would have been nice. But had I done that, whatever I did live through, I would have missed. And I would not be the same person today. Would I be a different person? Yes. Would I be somebody I like better? Probably not. My last thing I'd like to talk about is the entrepreneurial V. Okay? Now, the entrepreneurial V looks like this. There are 3 things they say that motivate people: achievement, relationships, and power. The true entrepreneur, you're taught, has a V that looks like this. And they're all about achievement. Relationships only matter to them in how they can get them to achievement and power, and then power. So their profile looks like this. Achievement's extremely important to the entrepreneur. Power is extremely important to the entrepreneur. And relationships have a little bit less importance to them. Now, depending on how steep your V is, they say the true entrepreneur is a pretty steep V. And the relationships only have value to them if it can bring them power and achievement. Based on that model, I should be a failure. And I don't think that that's really what it is about. Now, achievement, I love to achieve. I love to, be a powerful person. I'm not saying that those things aren't important to me, but they're only as important as what they bring me in terms of relationships. As a student of business, it's easy for you to be caught up in what you're going to achieve and the power you're going to have at the expense of your relationships. And I ask you today to not do that. To be about relationships. For it's through relationships that you will end up the person you want to be. With that, I'd like to close by just simply saying, when you leave today, these are the principles I want you to remember. Be a person of integrity. Be committed. Be about service. Live in abundance. Always be about excellence. And that will lead you to the person you want to be. Thank you for having me.
I think we now have a few minutes for some questions, and so if you have any questions, please raise your hand or speak up.
Yes, yes.
You talk so much about not going back and living a life of regret. What would you do for your next venture to help develop yourself to who you want to be?
For the longest time, I ran my company vertically. I was at the top, and I had everyone else underneath me. What happens when I retire, which I have in mind in 3 years, okay? When I go away, this vertical company is in trouble. So I decided to change my management model to be like this. And I installed a management team of which I am one. And I guess I had the final vote, but the other management members of this team are equally important, and they all have 1 vote. And so from this team, I'm able to build a stronger business that I can step away from. And from this, I can accomplish more. During the Olympics, I had to set up 26 events a day. I couldn't possibly oversee them from this position. But from this position, I began to grow a company. Now, my idea with Culinary Crafts is to expand our footprint in the marketplace. This is a hard place to expand from. This I can expand from. So now we're in the middle of developing mail order products that we can sell on QVC. I'm in the middle of that. I'm writing a cookbook. I have 3 in me, and then a 4th one on my life experiences. So watch for it. If you want to be connected, you can go online to my company's website, culinarycrafts.com, and click on my Recipe of the Month Club, and there I send out a free recipe every month, tell you a little bit about life and what I'm about. Another thing that I'm working at developing is a concept in Salt Lake in the new City Creek development. We're going to take over a venue there, work with a cafe up there and expand and perhaps do something called CC Tastings. And you'll come to one of my restaurants maybe. So I have lots of things and lots of ideas. Some of them may come to fruition, some of them may not. But whatever it is, my vision keeps expanding, even at age 57. Anyone else? Yes?
You talked a lot about pretty much not heading in the wrong direction, and yet being committed, working hard. And you mentioned getting about 4 hours of sleep. How do you, in the midst of being so busy pursuing this end, keep that perspective, keep yourself going, and not just say, oh, geez, is this really worth it? This is hard, and know that at the same time, just kind of like telling a fat guy, hey, exercise, you'll feel better, you can prove to him all the facts you want, but how did you keep that commitment in yourself to keep going?
I wish I had the answer to that. I know I did it. For me, it was about commitment, and for me, it was about survival. If I didn't do it and I didn't provide for my family, I knew we were going to be on welfare. And so when you have young children in a family, you can do a lot of things that you didn't think you were able to do before. And it taught me a little something about myself. That I have the kind of conviction inside me to do whatever is put in front of me. Whatever it is, I know I can do it. And having lived through that, I know that. But also that there's a time and a season for everything. And I looked forward to the season when I was not going to be living on 4 hours of sleep. And to pace yourself. But I also paid a price. When I turned 50 and they had my 50th birthday party, and afterwards I looked at those photos, I thought to myself, who the hell is that? She looked old. She weighed 240 pounds, because that's how I got through life, and I dealt with life. I didn't have time to exercise. Whenever I was emotionally drained, I ate, and I ate whatever was quick and easy. And in a catering business, that's either desserts or baked goods, okay? It's tough. And I decided I'm starting a new phase, in a new season in my life. And since then, I've lost nearly 90 pounds. And since then, I made a commitment that I'm exercising every day, no matter what. And I am strong physically. Somebody want to come down here? And I'm in a different phase of my life now. But you have to decide what phase you're in and know it's your season. If it's your season to be a mom, if it's your season to work hard, if it's your season to give everything and focus on this business and set aside other parts of your life right now. As long as you don't become so one-sided that you know that you're not going to go back and reclaim those. So find your season and map it out. Just know where the end goal is and where you want to be. One last question. Anything else? Yes?
So many people are afraid to go walk into that unknown. They're afraid of that, taking a step into the dark. What advice do you have to help people dispel that fear in their minds to keep them from starting, to keep them from being what they want to be and being just like everybody else?
For 13 years, I had a PBS cooking show. And the way I opened and ended every show was this: if I can do it, you can do it. I mean, here I was somebody who graduated in social work. I never had a culinary degree. I didn't have my chef certificate. I didn't do any of those kinds of things. And if anyone was set up to fail, it was probably me. This overburdened working mother who was eating herself into oblivion. If anybody could not do it, it was me. And yet I learned to cook. I learned to be really good at it. And so I would start every show with, whatever I'm going to teach today, just so you know, you can do it because I learned how to do it. And I don't know how to do anything. Okay? But it is believing in yourself at deep, deep levels. And there's that ever-present question of which comes first, the chicken or the egg? Do you first have to get the confidence, and then you can go and do? Or by going and doing, do you get the confidence? It doesn't really matter which is first for you, as long as you begin. And when you begin, it will take you there. For me, it was just definitely starting first. One foot in front of the other. I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't have the confidence to do it. But I began. And after I had done it long enough, I began to see myself as competent. So if you don't feel you are, just begin. Just start. And eventually you will. You're the chicken or the egg. It doesn't matter. Only just begin. Thank you. Thanks, Dean.
Well, we'd like to thank Mary today. I think we've been well fed, if you'll pardon the bad pun. But thank you for coming. We
My
appreciate
pleasure.
your
My
service.
pleasure. Thanks so much, Dean.